For years, viewers of Dan Preston's restoration of Château de Chaumont knew Nick as a steady grounding force. He wasn't there for the cameras, he was there for the land. A professional arborist and woodsman, Nick earned nicknames like the Viking and the Arborist, not just for his rugged appearance, but for a physical competence that made the grueling work of reclaiming a ruined estate look natural. While Dan chronicled the stone and mortar, Nick tended to the lungs of the estate, the trees and the surrounding woodland. He represented the rural in escape to rural France, bridging the gap between a massive construction project and the living, breathing French countryside. The winter of silence. The silent forest, remembering Nick from escape to rural France. The air in the French countryside felt a little thinner in late 2025. On a channel like Escape to Rural France, where the rustle of leaves and the clinking of restoration tools provide the soundtrack to a dream, viewers have a keen ear for what's missing. And suddenly the most vital note in that symphony, the steady, grounding presence of Nick, fell silent. To the fans, Nick wasn't just a helper or a contractor. He was the soul of the woodland. Known affectionately as the Viking or the Arborist, he was a man who moved through the trees of the Château de Chaumont with a quiet, rugged grace. He didn't need a script or a spotlight. His hands did the talking, reclaiming the earth from years of neglect. But as autumn turned to a bitter winter, the woodland scenes grew empty. The man who seemed as permanent as the ancient oaks he tended was nowhere to be found. A masterclass in dignity. By December 21st, 2025, the silence had become a roar. The comment sections were filled with a mix of worry and love, forcing Dan Preston to step before the camera. In a digital world that often trades tragedy for views, Dan's update was a heartbreaking masterclass in boundaries. He spoke of personal issues and privacy. There was no sensationalism, no medical jargon, and no invasion of a friend's hardest moments. It was a rare, beautiful act of protection. Dan wasn't just managing a channel, he was guarding the dignity of a brother. He asked the world to wait, to hope, and, most importantly, to give Nick the space to fight his battles in peace. The heavy heart of January. The hope that sustained the community through the holidays shattered on January 25th, 2026. Dan returned with an update that carried the weight of 1,000 stones. Nick had passed away. The news didn't come with a why or a how, because those details weren't for us. They belonged to the man who lived with them. Instead, the community was left with the who, a man of immense strength, deep kindness, and a connection to the land that felt ancient. The tributes that followed weren't just from fans, but from the entire Chateau family. Stephanie Jarvis and other creators spoke of a man who lived life on his own terms. We learned that even in his absence, his love lived on. His loyal dogs were taken in by the farm, ensuring that the creatures Nick loved most would never be alone. The legacy left behind. Nick's legacy isn't written in the stones of the chateau, but in the trees that still stand because of his care. He taught a global audience that you don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be the most impactful. He was a reminder that behind every screen is a real human heart, capable of great labour and great suffering, deserving of both our admiration and our silence. As the sun sets over the French rural landscape, the woods of Chaumont remain a little quieter now. But if you listen closely to the wind in the branches, you can still hear the echo of a man who loved the wild, worked the land, and reminded us all what it means to be a true friend. Rest easy, Viking. The forest remembers. A legacy beyond the screen. The atmosphere surrounding the Château de Chaumont shifted irrevocably on January 25, 2026, when the growing apprehension of the community was met with the news they had most dreaded. Nick had passed away. This announcement triggered what can only be described as a global digital wake, a rare moment where the often fragmented world of social media unified in a singular expression of grief. Prominent voices from the broader restoration community, such as Stephanie Jarvis, stepped forward to honour a man who lived with a fierce, quiet independence, describing him as a soul who moved through life on his own terms and left a profound mark on everyone fortunate enough to cross his path. As the community began to process the loss, the collective memory of thousands of viewers helped piece together a final, touching portrait of his closing chapters. One of the most comforting revelations involved the future of his constant companions. His beloved dogs, Loki and Eloise, found a new sanctuary at the farm, the Moon's home for retired sport horses and animals. In a gesture of profound empathy, their new caretakers ensured the transition was cushioned by the familiar, bringing blankets and scents from Nick's own camp so that his presence remained with them even as they settled into a life without him. In the quiet reflection that followed, many returned to his final appearances with a new, sombre perspective. Fans pointed to a fleeting, almost easy-to-miss moment in an earlier vlog where Nick spoke of the necessity to slow down and distance himself from the punishing physical demands of professional arboriculture. While it was initially interpreted as a simple transition toward a more restful pace of life, it now stands as a poignant testament to his character. Even when facing what were likely immense personal and health challenges, he chose to communicate his shift with the same understated dignity that defined his years in the French woods, never asking for pity, only continuing to live as part of the land until the very end. Why it matters. Nick's story resonates because it challenges the transactional nature of modern fame. He never sought the spotlight. In fact, he only appeared on his own YouTube channel briefly to share his love for the craft, yet he became a friend to thousands. Dan Preston's refusal to share the specific cause of death remains a powerful tribute. It serves as a reminder that even when we invite people into our homes through a screen, some stories belong only to the person who lived them. Nick didn't leave just a restored woodland at Chaumont. He left a legacy of quiet strength and a community that learned to grieve with dignity.